On a calm winter morning, snowflakes drifted softly from the sky, covering the world in a gentle blanket of white. Inside a beautiful castle, the queen sat near a tall wooden window, admiring the snowy landscape. As she worked on her needlecraft, she accidentally pricked her finger. 3 tiny drops of red fell onto the snow outside the window. The sight was so lovely that she wished for a child with skin as white as the snow, lips as red as the drops of blood, and hair as black as the polished wood of the window frame. Her wish came true when she gave birth to a baby girl named Snow White. The little princess was gentle and charming from the very start, and the queen loved her dearly. But soon after, the queen fell ill and passed away, leaving the king heartbroken and Snow White motherless. After some time, the king married again. His new queen was elegant and striking, admired for her beauty everywhere she went. Yet her heart was filled with pride, and she cared deeply about being the most beautiful person in the entire kingdom. She owned a magic mirror that spoke the truth, and she relied on it to confirm her beauty again and again. Snow White grew into a sweet, graceful child who loved everyone around her. She was polite, hardworking, and compassionate. As she reached her teenage years, she became even more beautiful every day. Her kindness made her glow in a way that touched everyone she met. But the queen began to feel threatened. At first, she simply noticed Snow White's beauty with mild concern. Soon, the admiration others felt for Snow White made her jealous. Her heart filled with worry that the princess might one day surpass her. When her mirror told her that Snow White had indeed become the fairest in the land, the queen's envy grew so intense that she lost all kindness within her. Unable to bear the thought of Snow White outshining her, the queen decided to remove her forever. She summoned a huntsman and ordered him to take Snow White deep into the forest and leave her there. The huntsman led Snow White into the woods, but he could not bring himself to harm the innocent girl. He urged her to run to safety and never return to the castle. Snow White, frightened and confused, ran into the forest. The trees loomed high above her, their branches forming dark shapes that rustled in the cold wind. Strange animals peered from behind bushes. Twisted roots curled across the forest floor like sleeping snakes. Every sound made her heart jump. After wandering for a long time, Snow White discovered a small clearing where the sunlight peeked through the leaves. In the center of the clearing stood a tiny cottage with a cheerful garden and a plume of smoke rising from its chimney. Snow White stepped closer, drawn by the warmth and safety it seemed to promise. Inside, everything was small and adorable. The chairs, the table, the dishes, and the 7 little beds lined neatly in a row. The room was cluttered with tools, cups, and crumbs. Wanting to be helpful, Snow White cleaned the cottage with gentle care. She swept the floor, washed the dishes, and tidied every corner. When she felt too tired to keep going, she curled up across the 7 small beds and fell into a deep sleep. As sunset painted the sky orange and pink, 7 dwarfs returned from their work in the gemstone mines. They marched toward the cottage with tools on their backs and dust on their boots. When they saw the door slightly open and the room unusually tidy, they looked at one another with surprise. Once inside, they found Snow White asleep in their bedroom. Her peaceful face softened their hearts immediately. They sensed she was kind and in need of help, so they decided to let her stay. When Snow White awoke, they welcomed her warmly. Feeling safe for the first time in hours, Snow White shared her story with them. The dwarfs promised they would protect her if she stayed with them. Snow White quickly became part of their little home. She cooked simple meals, kept the cottage tidy, and filled it with laughter and warmth. The dwarfs, in return, cared for her like family. Every morning they went to the mines, and every evening they came home, excited to sit around the table with the cheerful princess who brought light into their days. But far away in the castle, the queen stood before her mirror again. She expected it to assure her that she was the fairest in the land. Instead, she learned that Snow White was still alive, living with the dwarfs in the forest. Rage flashed through her mind as jealousy consumed her once more. She decided that she herself would finish the task. Using her knowledge of dark magic, the queen created a powerful potion that transformed her into an old woman with wrinkled skin, grey hair, and frail hands. In this disguise, she took a small basket filled with goods and headed toward the dwarf's cottage. Snow White was alone when she heard a gentle knock. She had promised the dwarfs to be careful, but her kind nature made her curious. Outside stood the disguised queen, who appeared weak and harmless. The old woman held a small wooden comb decorated with colorful stones. It looked beautiful, and the queen pretended to offer it as a simple gift. Snow White allowed her inside. As soon as the queen gently brushed Snow White's hair with the comb, the young princess collapsed. The comb was soaked in poison. The queen left with satisfaction, believing her plan had finally worked. When the dwarfs returned, they discovered Snow White lifeless on the floor. They searched her carefully and found the comb stuck in her hair. Suspecting it was enchanted, they immediately removed it. Snow White gasped, and her eyes slowly fluttered open. She woke with trembling fear as she realized how close she had been to danger. The dwarfs begged her not to open the door to anyone again. Snow White promised she would follow their warning. But the queen, back in the castle, soon learned from her mirror that Snow White was still alive. Fury twisted inside her like a storm. She decided to use the most dangerous spell she possessed. She created a bright red apple so beautiful that no one could resist it. But inside, she hid a deadly sleeping curse, one strong enough to send Snow White into an endless slumber, unless broken by true love. Disguising herself as a kind old woman once again, she carried the apple deep into the forest. When she reached the cottage, she offered Snow White the glowing fruit. Snow White hesitated, remembering the dwarf's warning. To deceive her further, the queen took a bite from the harmless side of the apple to show that it was safe. Snow White, feeling reassured, accepted the fruit and took a bite from the poisoned side. The effect was immediate. Snow White collapsed, her body falling as softly as a petal from a flower. Her breathing stopped, and the room became still. The queen walked away in triumph, convinced this time nothing could save the princess. As she crossed a dangerous mountain path, storm clouds gathered above her. Thunder roared, lightning struck a boulder nearby, sending it crashing down. The queen slipped and disappeared into the deep valley below, ending her cruelty forever. When the dwarfs returned, they found Snow White lying on the floor, still and cold. No matter what they tried, they could not wake her. She looked peaceful, as if she were in the deepest sleep, her cheeks still rosy and her hands gently folded. Believing she was gone forever, the dwarfs wept with broken hearts. They could not bring themselves to bury her, for she looked so serene and beautiful, like she might open her eyes any moment. Instead, they built a glass coffin trimmed with gold so that everyone could see her purity. They carried it to a hill covered with flowers and kept watch over her day and night. Time passed. Seasons flowed like pages in a storybook. Snow covered the ground in winter, blossoms welcomed spring. Warm winds filled the air in summer, and golden leaves danced in the fall. Snow White remained unchanged, glowing softly inside her glass coffin. One day, a prince traveling through the forest noticed the coffin sparkling under sunlight. He approached with wonder, seeing Snow White resting inside, her face gentle and calm. He felt a deep admiration for her purity and kindness. The dwarfs, who had grown to trust the prince, agreed when he asked permission to take Snow White to his castle so she could be honored and cared for. As the prince's attendants lifted the coffin, they stumbled slightly on a root. The sudden movement caused the piece of poisoned apple lodged in Snow White's throat to loosen. She took a faint breath. Her chest rose softly. Then her eyes opened, bright and alive once more. The dwarfs and the prince were overwhelmed with joy. Snow White, awakening from her long sleep, smiled with warmth and gratitude. She was finally safe. Not long after, Snow White and the prince celebrated a beautiful union, surrounded by happiness and kindness. The dwarfs were treasured guests, and Snow White never forgot their love and loyalty. She lived with the prince in a bright, peaceful palace, filled with gardens, sunlight, and songs. The dwarfs continued to visit her often, and she kept their cottage in her heart forever. Snow White's story became a gentle reminder that goodness shines even in dark times, and that courage and kindness have the power to overcome jealousy and fear.